All right, everyone, welcome to Warrior Women in Business podcast, episode 59. Today, we're going to have a really exciting podcast, especially for those of you warrior women that have attended some recent events that we've produced, including part of New York Music Month. We produced a concert, and there are a lot of attendees and people that were interested in being involved and wanted to learn more about warrior women in the arts and culture in New York City. So I definitely have a powerhouse on today. But before I get started, I just want to give you a little bit of brief, especially those of you that are new to Warrior Women in Business, who I am and what Warrior Women in Business is all about. So Warrior Women in Business is a organization that I started a few years back as part of my main media and marketing and branding agency, JS Media, to really support the career and business development growth of not only women in business and female executives, but also women in the arts. And since that time, I've interviewed leaders from women in arts and culture across where we serve, which is New York City and Los Angeles and Beverly Hills. And, we do a lot to support that. And this podcast is definitely a big piece of that. But Warrior Women in Business also has hosted events, concerts, and a lot in the educational space. My name is Jasmine Sandler. If I didn't mention, I'm a keynote speaker and an advisor primarily to female executives that are looking to drop into new ventures. And so with that being said, a couple of things I want to mention before we get into the podcast. One is the last episode that I did was with a powerhouse in women in military. And the first time I actually ever interviewed anyone from the military segment. That was Phyllis J. Wilson, who is the president of the Women's Military Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. And Women's Military Memorial gives awareness to the over 3 million women in the military that have served since the Revolutionary War, which is crazy, something I did not know about. And in lieu of that, Warrior Women in Business, we also have a fashion line that we've created primarily to drive up revenues to give back to support women and families across the United States. We have Women in Military Tea, a premium design tea that for every tea that's sold, it's on our shop, it's on all social media shops. We're giving $1 back to help the Women in Military Memorial and Women in Military Foundation. So you can check all of that out on our website and our social media. All that being said, I want to jump into today's podcast, and I also want to give a shout out to the Arts and Culture Network before I get into the podcast. I met today's guest on a Zoom for the Arts and Culture Network, which is run out of London, of which I'm the New York City ambassador. And the Arts and Culture Network is a fabulous, I can't even say, fabulous organization that really is in the spirit of Warrior Women in Business. I think it's really about being authentic and truly helping people in business. Arts and Culture Network primarily supports those professionals in the arts and cultural segment by bringing them together through events and programs, of which we will be announcing one soon. But I had the pleasure of meeting Gorman Newman. You could say hello. I know it's a long introduction. And within, I think, Robin, a minute of us being in a breakout room, we clicked.
Yep, it was fast.
It was really fast. And the breakout rooms are so fast. I kind of said, oh, after she told me what she does as a relationship love coach, and also on Broadway, I was like, oh my God, you have to be on the podcast. Would you please be on my podcast? And she quickly said yes, and we quickly put this together. So I'm going to give Robin's bio. And as I always say, I do my best with the bios. So if I miss anything, she'll definitely let me know. But Robin struck me very quickly as someone that really aligns to the Warrior Women in Business mission, which is women that help other women, but women that have been trailblazers. And so their stories can help other women that are coming up, particularly in the arts and culture segment. So Robin won her first Tony Drama Desk Outer Critics Circle Award as a producer on the musical Revival Parade in 2023. She was a producer on Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812. I have to stop with that because the reason I got so excited is people know me. I attend Juilliard as an advanced vocalist student. I was asked to sing something from that play. I didn't know anything about it, and then I met Robin. So it was very synchronous. Tony Award nominated there. Also, Fat Ham Tony Award nominated, and is currently on the production team of The Who's Tommy. I'm a big fan of The Who. And I know it's ending this month. Yes, Robin?
Yeah, Sunday.
Sunday. So, we are planning an outing. I've been reaching out to a lot of the Warrior Women members of our organization to do a quick watch of Tommy. But she's doing
Great.
other amazing things. Cabaret, a Tony Award nominated also production. Smash, coming spring 2025 based on the hit TV series. I'm going to ask her about that today. And the Museum of Broadway, which I actually took a look at it before the podcast. And I mean, how long have I lived in New York? Like a gazillion years. And all these things, New Yorkers, we just whiz by. We're so busy. We go through
Yeah.
Times Square because we want to get out of it because we're too busy. And no, it's unfortunate. And I'm like, what are all these amazing things? So now I'm telling everybody. Robin has in fact been Tony Award nominated for every show she has produced, which kudos to you. I can't even imagine. She's in early development with a theater colleague on a musical inspired by Robin's book, which she's going to talk about today. How to Marry a Mensch, which I love it. I love that title. And she's been seen on CNN and the Today Show discussing the title and dishing dating and relationship advice. Her website is lovecoach.com. All of this, just so everybody knows, we're going to put in the show notes. And she has successfully coached people who have gone on to meet their significant other, and especially in New York, which I got to say is very difficult, right? After that, she will be, after this, just to let you know, once we're done with today's podcast episode, any questions that you have for Robin, all this stuff is going to go in the show notes. And definitely, I would love for you to go and attend her shows. So we're going to get right into this. All right. So there's a lot to uncover here. A successful female Broadway producer, not just once, but many times, which is fantastic. And a love coach expert for Warrior Women in New York City. I hope all the listeners are taking notes on both sides. So first of all, welcome to the show, Robin. Thank you for taking the time out. Thank you for accepting my invitation. That means a lot to me. And to get started, I know there's a ton of women. I know from Juilliard, from Times Square, where we rehearse my music. There's a ton of women in the Broadway scene that would love to hear how you got started, and your background, like what led you to this in the first place, and I'm sure there's a story behind how you became a producer, right? I'm sure there's several steps to that. So if you could share, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, my path was quite unexpected. And again, thank you for having me here. And I'm happy to be sharing with everybody. And yes, I really like to empower people. So I hope that my story will do that. And I just want to say that you don't need to have experience to do it. And people think that you need to know certain people or be really cued in. And yes, that's important. But honestly, it really is possible if it's important to you. And my path was that, first of all, I grew up loving theater. I was raised going to shows. I'm a theater junkie from a young age. I was the arts editor of my college newspaper. So I've sort of been dancing in it and around it for quite some time. And I actually launched an organization for women who became moms over 35, because that's me. It's called motherhoodlater.com. And that actually is what led me to my theater work, because there was a big trend in mom shows for a while there. And I was actually doing a lot of promotion and marketing with some of the social media firms for theater and other companies, because that's my background. I have a master's in marketing and a background in public relations. And then it became really obvious to me that this is like a trend thing, not just reaching moms and women over 40 who we know are the sweet spot of ticket buyers, but there was a lot of shows thematically about parenting. And one of them was a show that was in LA. And it was one of those bizarre things where I just decided to make a call. And I called the theater where the show was playing. It was the Geffen at the time. And it actually wasn't even playing anymore. And I left some kind of cryptic message. I don't even know what I said at the box office. And I thought, oh, it's just going to fall into a black hole. It doesn't really matter what I say.
I've been there.
Yeah, exactly. Like no one's ever going to call me back. And a few weeks later, one of the producers for the show called me back, and I was totally shocked. And we had the most lovely conversation. And unbeknownst to me, the show was coming to New York. And it was like one of those things, Jasmine, where like the universe knew something that I didn't know. And
what was the name of that show?
It was called Motherhood Out Loud.
Okay.
And in LA, it was called In Mother Words, and they changed the title. And it
Oh,
was kind of primary stages off Broadway in New York City. And I
right.
had this lovely conversation with one of the producers. There were two at the time. And she asked me if I wanted to get involved. And I didn't even know what that meant. And of course, at the time, that was code for, would you like to put some money in? And I had never invested
Oh, I
in
see.
before. And so I decided to go for it, but in going for it, because it just felt right. It was one of those things where I liked the script. I was a mom. I could relate. I loved theater. And I just felt like, maybe I could dig my heels into this or my toes into this and really get involved. And I asked them, could I, other than just putting money in, could I help with marketing? Could I help do some events, targeting the mom community? How could I actively participate and feel part of this? And they actually allowed me to do all of that. So it felt really good. And for me, it was the best marriage of my love of theater, my being a mom, my background in marketing and PR, when it just all came together. And I
Yeah.
felt home every time I was in the theater. And I decided from that point on that I wanted to do more of it. And I wound up getting invited. Well, actually, I invested in another show, which was on Broadway. I decided to make that leap. And it
Mhm.
was a show called Sylvia that had been off Broadway, but it was now coming to Broadway a number of years later. And off Broadway, it was with Sarah Jessica Parker, who I love.
Oh, how
And
nice. I
yeah, who doesn't
love
love
her.
but coming to Broadway, interestingly, it was actually Matthew Broderick as the male lead, which I thought was so kind of bizarre that it was
I
her
mean,
husband now. He'd done it years ago,
yeah.
and Annalie Ashford, and who I
Oh, okay.
adore. And unfortunately, it didn't have a long run on Broadway. I think it was just a tough time. It was a comedy. A lot of people gravitate more toward musicals. So
Yes,
I'm
that's
sure
true.
a lot of factors, in that.
Mhm.
But I loved it. I just loved being in that scene. And when you're an investor, you get to go to opening night, and there's all kinds of
Yeah.
cool
Oh,
experiences that come with that. But then I made the decision that I wanted my name in a playbill. And if I ever was going to invest again, if I was able to do that as a producer or certainly raise money, because all producers have to raise money, I wanted to go to that next level. And I wound up meeting somebody on the red carpet of Sylvia who invited me onto Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. And I had not seen the show. It had been at Ars Nova in the city and also a casino in a tent, which for some reason, I don't know, I think I never knew what that tent was. And I never went in to see for some reason. That's not like me. But I missed it here. So there was a bus actually going out to Cambridge. It was at ART.
oh,
And the
interesting.
who invited me on said, do you want to go on the bus? And at first I was like, I don't know, don't want to go on this bus. I'm not an early morning person. It was leaving early from the city and it was back and forth in one day. So that was
Right. Yeah.
a trip. And I just said, you know what? Put me on the bus. And it was pretty wild and crazy. They were passing vodka up the aisle to
Oh my God, how
get
fun
into
is
the
this?
Russian mood. Yeah, the show set in Russia. There was a
No,
lot
I
of
know, I know, I know. Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of kind of crazy drunken brawl, dancing scenes. So we were all in the mood by the time we got there. And I just fell in love with the show. I came out and I was like, what did I just see? It was, for anyone who knows the show, it's highly immersive. They gutted the whole theater. There were actors all over the entire theater. They handed out pierogies and egg
Oh my God, how fun.
shakers.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it was such a breakthrough immersive thing, and obviously pre-pandemic, so there was an opportunity for more shows to do that comfortably. This
Right.
was in 2016. And so I just went for it and I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I had to do my first raise, as a producer, and I
Mm.
had never raised before. And, this circles back to the comment that I started out this conversation that if you want something badly enough, even if you've never done it, just go for it. And I'm
Mm.
that person. And I'm not going to say it was easy. I was very tense a lot. I was
Yeah.
kind of always on, the lookout. And I learned that I'm just the messenger. And you know what? I'm just going to tell anybody and everybody I know that I'm
Mhm.
working on this project. And for the right people, they'll get excited and want to come on board. And one of the things that I always tell my investors is that if you love the arts and you love theater, without investors, it wouldn't exist. So it's really important that if someone has the financial means to partake in this. Plus, it's cool, crazy fun. You get to be in that room and talk about networking, amazing mingling opportunities, and with some shows like Smash, which I know we're going to talk about, but that's an interesting example because that's coming up in spring 25, and that's a developmental show.
Yeah.
So, whereas Great Comet was a transfer because it had been somewhere else and then was coming to Broadway. And when you're on something developmentally, like my investors who are part of that show have had the chance to actually be in the room for workshops and to offer feedback and to really be part of that process at a very early juncture. And there's something super exciting about that. If you enjoy theater and want to feel like an insider, then that's a really great way to do that.
Wow. Well, I love the story. Well, I love the vodka story.
Yeah.
No, that's not the big piece of it, but no, I love how it seems. And I'm glad that you said it wasn't easy because things aren't easy. I always say that with business, but I do love how you talked about how you fell into it because it kind of led you there. And a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to be open, right? And you have your passion, you have your interest. You have to be open and let things take you on that proverbial, you took a bus ride, but that ride, so to speak, right? They kind of got you there and you found what you loved and it sounds to me like you weren't also afraid to jump in. So those are definitely lessons that women in business, they need, because it's a lot of times we are set by goals and plans, especially in marketing, right? Goals and plans and metrics. Every day I live the life. So I think that's very important when you said it's important to think that way. And also I like what you said about the investors, because a lot of times investors don't see the value of, in this case, the arts as much as they should, because I think it is a very symbiotic relationship. So my next question is about the industry, because I got to be honest, I don't know too much about the Broadway industry, but the industry for women on Broadway, are there traditional roles that women who are in the arts, coming up and say, I want to get on Broadway or want to work on Broadway? Are there traditional roles you see that women either take on or are led to versus the path that you've been on? And do you have any advice for women that maybe are interested in working in Broadway, but don't really have an idea of how to carve that path?
Sure. I mean, it really depends in part on what you would like to do. If you're looking to become a producer like me, for example, I would say that most of us start as investors. It's pretty rare that someone would come out the gate and just be a producer. And I think it helps to have been an investor as well, because then you understand what that feels like and it gives you some sense of the lay of the land, even though the difference between that and being a producer and what I like is being a producer, as well as I get to be in that room, not just developmentally, for example, but also from a marketing perspective. Because I have the background in PR, it's really important to me to feel like I'm part of the team, to feel like I try to choose projects where the lead producers are inclusive and communicative and will invite ideas into the room and really listen to who's there. So to answer your question, as far as women, I think there's a lot of opportunity for women. I do know other women producers. Do the lead producers tend to be more male? I would say probably more of them are men, but it's not to say that there aren't female lead producers and that there aren't opportunities for that. There absolutely are. There is a nonprofit organization which isn't producing specific, but it's called Maestra. And it was actually formed with Georgia Stitt, who's a real woman pioneer herself, and she's the wife of Jason Brown, and who's a composer. They're both composers. Yes. And that's an organization that really supports women's efforts, because it's not just being a producer. Of course, there are playwrights and directors and and all kinds of people, and have many of those roles in the past been a little more traditionally occupied by men? I would say yes. They have. And there are organizations that are not fighting toward that, but really working toward more inclusivity. And for a long time, there was an organization called the Lily Awards. And they would do an annual gala, and they would actually honor women, rising in their respective arenas in theater. And they were doing a count for a while to really track the number of women who
Yeah.
female producers or female directors or what have you. And
Mm.
while the numbers have been going up, they're not comparable to men.
Right. I mean, I'm a member of the Guild of Music Supervisors and NIWIFT, and I was just wondering, like, I'm glad you brought that up. Like, what organizations, and we'll put in the show notes, that
Yeah.
you think women might want to sign up as members or start attending events or just getting involved.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I would add to that too is that if, a good place to start, I'm also vice president of the board of New York Theater Barn. And New York Theater Barn is a nonprofit dedicated to the early development of musicals with diversity, which is important, as well.
Mhm.
And if that's a way for people to get involved and to really dig into different organizations, is to go through the nonprofits, and whether you join a board or you attend fundraisers, you get on the list for the nonprofits, you become a member of some of them, like lots of, like New Group, for example. I just subscribed to their new season.
Yep.
And New Group, some of these, the nonprofits have like member events that you can attend, and it's a cool way to network. They also have talkback. So there are some insider experiences that the nonprofits off Broadway offer, and that's really interesting. There's also an organization that's worth noting. It's called Theater Resources Unlimited. It's
Okay.
TRU. And for anyone who's looking to learn more about the business, be in that room, so to speak, they have all kinds of courses like speed networking. It's all on Zoom. And for writers as well, if someone has work that they would like to share, of course, love to get produced, to connect with producers and what have you, they do this like speed, it's like a speed dating thing.
Oh, yeah.
For playwrights. And that's a wonderful
wonderful.
organization. Yeah, very affordable as
Mm.
well. And you just never know who you might meet.
That's the truth. I mean, look, we met through ACN.
Exactly. Just get
You
in that
never
room
know.
once, then the right meeting. I met you once. I picked up the phone and made a call to the theater. Sometimes it just takes one act of something to change the entire course of your life, and that was my personal experience.
I love that. Well, a lot of these organizations we'll put in the show notes as well, so people can check them out, because I think that's important to start to network. I mean,
Yeah.
without that, you're kind of shooting in the dark.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, you have to get out there. That's the thing. Like, once I decided that I was interested in theater and wanted to more aggressively go that route, it wasn't like I knew people. I didn't have investors in my back pocket. It wasn't like I knew a million producers to invite me to stuff. I simply started getting out there in the ways that I could, step by step, and then you build from
Yes.
there. And then if you stick with it and you want it badly enough, it'll happen for you.
Yeah,
And also get under the wing of someone like me. If someone's interested in learning about the business, if they might want to invest or dip their toe in, or they have questions, or, whatever it is. I'm always happy to talk to people. I'm always happy to keep people posted on my projects. And that's how you start. You need somebody who you like, who you trust, because that's important. Someone you think that you can learn from, and someone who you want to be in that room with. And then you join that team.
Yep. That's what it's all about. I mean, mentorship is really important, because that can set you on fire. Really.
Exactly.
I mean, just the connections alone and learning. So I think that's tremendous. Question. So in your role, I mean, really, what you've done is outstanding, and I put you in the leadership category. And it's not easy to be a leader. And the last 3 or 4 podcast guests that I've had have been, I don't even know how they say, I get them to say yes, but I had, the turnaround specialist for Marvel, the CEO and chairman of Marvel, on my podcast recently. I had Shannon Lee on my podcast recently, just amazing people. And the common thread is they're leaders. And I put you in the category. So I'm wondering the case of being a female leader, and you just mentioned it, letting people come under your wing, but what are some of the things that you've learned about leadership, in being a producer?
That's a good question. I mean, I just want to add, first of all, kudos to you, because for getting all those people, I do think that you attract what you put out.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, no matter what you want to do. And I think you need, I mean, one of the reasons why I think I've been able to be successful is because I'm authentic. I don't sugarcoat it. I speak the truth when I'm reaching out to people if I think they might want to invest in a project. No one has a crystal ball. No one, if we
That
all
is
did,
the truth.
we'd all be winning the lotto. I mean, wouldn't that be great? When you're deciding what show that you think you want to be part of, for me, it's like, why this show? Why now? There are questions that I ask myself. And I
Yeah.
think that's true for any business. Like, why do you want to do what you want to do now? Is there an audience for it? Who will come? Why, if this appeals to me, do I think it would appeal to other people, and why? And where are those people? Because I think that's an important question now. People aren't necessarily going out quite as much as
Right.
they did pre-pandemic, and that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to just speak the truth. You have to believe in yourself, for sure,
Mhm.
even if you have tough days, and I did. One of the things that I learned as well, and it's such a big
Mhm.
lesson for me, is no is just no for now. So I would find so often, if I was reaching out to, again, people who might want to invest, and it's timing. They might say, no, I can't do it now. And maybe the stock market's bad, or maybe it just doesn't work for them. They have college
So
loans or what
true.
have you. And then if you circle back and 2 months later, the story could be completely different. And, I'm speaking of investors, but this is a lesson for anybody who wants to do anything that you're
I,
looking for.
I gotta tell you,
No, you can't overcome a no.
no, it's so unbelievable because I've been doing LinkedIn training and speaking keynote forever. So I have a very strong network. I love my LinkedIn people. And but I've had executives there that I've met with and pitched business, big companies for like 10, 12 years ago. And then I stay in contact and they move to another job position and then the timing's right. So I think,
Exactly. Yep.
he's like, well, I said no to you 12 years ago, Jasmine, about this, but now let's do something. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, like you said, it's for any, I love that you said that because a lot of times people, they take a no and like, oh, forget it. I get them so
Right.
frustrated. But instead, it's like, no, well, if you build a relationship, the person's busy, everybody has their own things going on. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it is about relationships because,
yeah,
like I said earlier, you want to be in the room with people you want to be on the room with.
yeah,
And especially in the case of theater, no one knows how a show is going to go. But I always tell my investors, you know what? I can't promise you're going to make money because no one knows that. But I can promise you're going to have a good time, because that I can control and I'll be sure of it. And I think you just have to tell it like it is, and whatever it is that you're trying to do. And for the right people, if you create it and you're upfront about it, they will come.
yeah. And I imagine also if there are investors investing into a show that you're producing, and maybe it's their first time, they could also learn quite a bit from that
Oh,
experience, just in general, right?
oh,
And
for sure.
never mind just in like the what we, the ROAS we say in our world, right? The return on ad spend. But really they might learn some life lesson or how they do business. I think it might be
Oh,
tremendous.
it's a big learning opportunity, and you don't know, who you're going to meet, and it's going to be a memorable experience. And you think about people investing in all kinds of stock market, or restaurants
Anything.
or whatever, and
Restaurants.
I always say, if you put money in the stock market and you lose it or lose some of it, that's not going to feel good. But if you put money into a show, worst case scenario, if it doesn't go as you hope, you are going to have a good time. You might feel badly, but you're going to remember it. And none of my investors, if anyone has lost money, has ever regretted the experience. I've never regretted it, and I've lost some money. You're going to win some and you're going to lose some, but
Yeah.
it's never been something that I would look back on and say, oh, I wish I didn't do that, because I have memories that are worth a lifetime.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I think it's also synonymous to just running businesses and projects, and you learn every time.
Yeah.
What I really like about what you're saying is the investor gets involved with it. It seems like such a unique experience rather than a stock market. I mean,
Right.
you invest in Apple. It's like you're not working at Apple. You know what I mean? Very different.
Right. I mean, other than
Yeah.
making money, if you're lucky, there's no experience there for you.
Right.
Whereas here there is, and it's an experience that, if you love the arts and you love theater, it's going to be exciting to
Yeah.
you. And it's, how can you top that? I mean, every day, there are days when I stand back and I even say, I can't even believe that I do what I do.
That's the
Like, how
best
did I get to
feeling.
this place? It feels like a privilege to me because I really have always felt that theater has the power to change lives, and theater has the power to entertain, deliver messages.
Ever since Shakespeare.
Right. Yeah.
That's why I studied Shakespeare in England.
Oh,
And I brought it up the other day to someone and I said, think about it. Think about like all life is a stage. Like still a common quote. It's crazy, but theater has changed and can change lives. I completely.
oh, absolutely. It's the communal experience, unlike anything other to be in that room and to like Tommy, using Tommy as an example. Tommy is such a high energy show.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you're going to get this group to go. And it's, when you're in there and you just the power of the electricity of the show itself, but knowing that you're sitting there with people who are sharing in that. And we have the finale of the show, and it's not even the curtain call, but the finale itself is like sends chills up your spine. Every time I see it, I feel that way. And you can see the entire audience reacts the same way. Everybody stands up, starts applauding and practically singing. And it's not even the curtain call yet. Like, wait a minute, this is still the show. You're not supposed to be standing up yet. But they get so excited. And it's really cool I love just being in a theater with that energy. It's nothing compares, unless you're at a live concert, maybe, but
and we could talk about that, but this isn't my normal music podcast. So let's talk about your shows coming up. So Tommy, let's talk about Cabaret a little bit. Tell us a little bit about that, what to expect, where that's about.
Cabaret is a thing. This is Cabaret, unlike you've ever seen it. If you've seen it before, you have not seen this. At the moment, we have Eddie Redmayne and Gail Rankin in the lead roles, and they're both in it until mid-September. And then there'll be a cast change, and we don't know who that will be yet, but of course that'll be announced. But what they did was it's at the August Wilson Theater, but they're calling it the Kit Kat Club because the entire theater was gutted. So it's not even a theater anymore. You walk in and you don't even go in the way you normally would. You go in like more of a back way, and you're walking through this tunnel type experience. Wow. And as if you're walking into this seedy nightclub in Berlin.
Yeah.
And so immediately there's that vibe and feeling. And then they give you a little glass of schnapps, when you first get in.
How fun is this?
Yeah. It's totally like wild and seedy. And there's 3 floors. And there's bars on every floor, and there's no stage. So what they did was they built a platform in the round, and the platform goes up and down. So the actors at times actually enter from below when it comes up, and other times they enter from all different sides of the main floor there. And on the main floor, surrounding this circular platform, there's a lot of small like cabaret type tables for like 2 to 4 people. And then there are some regular orchestra seats. And then when you go up, there's mezzanine, but even the mezzanine was reconstructed because it's a split mezzanine. So there's actually 2 mezzes. They built one because each one surrounds this center platform that you see down below. And the view was so great. Like, I'm a little bit of a diva, I have to say, and I like to sit in orchestra. Yeah. But I have to say, Mez for Cabaret, and that's actually where I've mostly sat, is really good. I really love the view. It actually feels closer than many of the Mezzes do. I think because of the reconfiguration of the theater, I feel like you actually are closer. And Gail Rankin, who plays Sally Bowles, actually makes an entrance from one of the Mezzes, and she crawls through like the whole first row of the mezz. Oh, wow. So it's really neat. It's very immersive. You get to come in an hour before the show, and they call it the prologue portion, and that's actually a second cast. And that cast is playing instruments, and they're walking through, and they're engaging with you, and they're dancing, and it's like a whole crazy party vibe before the show actually starts. And then you have the regular performance itself, and there are food and drink options which you can order. The bar is open throughout, but if you're seated at one of those cabaret tables in the orchestra, if you want to have a food and drink package, then you can do that and arrange that in advance. So it's like a whole experience. You're there for like hours.
I love this.
Yeah And Eddie's performance is truly unlike anything we've never seen.
I was looking this one up, and I was like peeking through all of the actors and the dancers, and there's some powerhouses there showing,
Yeah.
that they've been TV show things they've been on, and I'm wow, like this, it's like a star-studded cast, and it seems, I mean, now that you explain it, it seems like a wonderful night, fun night, really fun night out,
Oh, it is. It's like a whole thing, like you don't even need to go to dinner. I mean, you could eat there, but if you decide to skip dinner for the evening and or the afternoon and just go there, like it feels so complete without feeling like you need to do the dinner part too, because it's such a full experience. And Eddie, what's cool is that each of the MCs, and he plays the MC, have really put their own stamp on the role. And Eddie's interpretation is so different. He's kind of like this maniacal, evil clown, and he contorts his body. He does like these weird hand gestures. I don't even know how he does it. He probably needs a chiropractor after like every performance.
Maybe he
But
triple
it's
jointed.
really something to see.
Wow. Yeah, I like I said, I looked at it, and it just kind of, just in looking at the website, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
really seems amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's move on to Smash. Tell us about Smash a little bit. When
Yeah,
it's what
Smash
can
is
we
so
expect?
exciting. We actually just announced yesterday that the TV series, it's based on a hit TV series, and the TV series is going to be streaming on Peacock.
Okay.
So, which is so cool because it's been a while. It was before the pandemic, actually, that the series was so popular. People haven't forgotten about it, but it's been some time since you could see it. So now you can see it again if you're a fan, or if you don't know it. It's a great time to tune in. And what the series is it's an insider take on theater. So it's the making of a musical and all the controversy and behind the scenes and the challenges that come with that. So the musical that's coming in spring 25 that I'm on is bringing to the stage. It's an homage to Smash. It's not an exact storyline
Right.
from the TV series. It's the same characters and a lot of the same music. So fans of the TV series, I think, will be really pleased with what they're going to see, because they're going to recognize the music and, of course, the characters. And it's funny. It's like a big song and dance comedy musical, family friendly, which is wonderful, because how many family friendlies do you have
That's
on
right.
Broadway? And I think people are waiting with bated breath with this, because there's such a big fan base.
So who's in this?
Well, it hasn't been full cast yet, but
Oh,
Robin Herder has been
okay.
attached, and Robin Herder she's amazing. I mean, she's like this crazy triple threat, like dancer extraordinaire, singer,
Oh,
actress.
wow.
She's currently in Chicago
Okay.
on Broadway. She was in A Beautiful Noise. She was also in Moulin Rouge.
Oh, wow.
People can follow the show on Instagram. I would highly recommend that, because they've been pushing out a lot of like teaser videos about it. Robin
Okay.
Herder herself has shared quite a lot on Instagram too. So if you're kind of into it, you can sort of follow along as an insider on social media, which is fun.
Okay, and we'll put all that in the show notes. So now
Okay.
let's pivot a little bit. We're going to talk about How to Marry a Mensch a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's the book about? Talk about the book a little bit, how you came up with it, how long it is, where it's available, who should read it. Talk about the book, please.
Sure. Well, Mensch, first of all, is a decent, responsible person. And I like to add, who even your mother would love.
And no, you should
If
say
that
also,
matters.
and your grandmother.
Grandmother, yes, anybody in your family or your friends. And Mensch, it's a man or a woman. I get asked that a lot. Well, what's a
Right, of
female?
course.
It's
Yeah.
like, no, it's
It's
Mensch is
either
good
or.
for everybody. And my website is lovecoach.com. So that's where they can get more information about the book. And I have copies available. I'm happy to autograph them. This is actually my second book. The first one was How to Meet a Mensch in New York. And that was kind of a zaggedy guide. And
Oh, I love it.
yeah, it was great. I mean, the reason I wrote that book was because I just felt like, and I actually wrote it during my first year of marriage, which is not something I recommend to be a newlywed writing a dating book. So it wasn't the timing that I anticipated with that. Luckily, my husband was pretty understanding. But it was the reason I felt compelled to write the first one is because I just so long felt that, it can be challenging enough to meet a partner. And it doesn't have to be someone that you marry, but just whoever you want to be with.
Yeah.
And that's hard enough to get yourself out there, but you have to figure out on top of that where to go and what to do. I mean, what a job that is.
Yeah.
And I just, for years, I kept on wondering, why isn't there something that makes that a little easier? Why do we have to do all the research to figure that out too? And so that's where How to Meet a Mensch in New York was born. And the response was so huge and more than I ever expected, honestly. And I wound up a regular on Good Day New York TV, like every month, dishing advice on this. CNN did a story. The Associated Press wrote about me. I was featured in the New York Times. I got articles in London. The book wasn't even sold in London.
Wow.
It was
But a
crazy.
necessary topic, right?
Well, you know what it was? I felt like a big piece of it was the word mensch. And why?
Yeah, it kind of the highlights for me as well.
Yeah, well, because you know why? Because it's the kind of word that if you know it, you love it, because nothing takes the place of it. And if you don't know it, you want to know it. It seemed to be one of those words that has an intrigue around it. And I think now more than ever, and I feel so strongly, I'm kind of on this mensch platform because I feel like since the pandemic, particularly, I would like to hope that we've all learned that we're in this world together.
Yes.
And that acts of kindness matter, and not just to post memes on Facebook or Instagram about being kind, but how are you showing up in the world? You know, I mentioned earlier being authentic as a producer. Yes, it's important to be authentic, period. And also to mensch yourself. Like, what are you doing to practice self-care to make yourself feel good? And that's really where the second book came from, which is, you can actually see on my wall there, which is How to Marry a Mensch. And again, it's not about marriage. It's just, that just sounded good in the title, but it's really, you know, what you want for yourself. And that's because at the end of the day, you want someone who's going to treat you well. And that sounds so obvious, but you know what? And that's one of the things that I find so much in my work as a love coach. And, you know, I'm not a matchmaker per se, although if I can match someone up, I will. But what I do is I help people think strategically about their social life and to try to reframe their mindset, or to really have an approach that is maybe a little more out of the box than what they've taken. I also help people with online dating and reviewing how they push themselves out there and their profile and their photos. Because you know what? It's exhausting, you know, all of that. And I try to do the homework for people, but sometimes I think it's so helpful to have another set of eyes.
Yeah.
Because we're also close to ourselves, where everyone's in a hurry.
An objective opinion is very important.
Yeah, you know, and sometimes
otherwise you can
just get stuff done. Right. You're just chucking it out.
Yeah.
You know, thinking about what impression am I making, you know, in the midst of all of this, and how are people sizing me up? And, you know, and the other piece of that is, if you want to get married or find a partner or just have a successful dating life or whatever it is that you want for yourself, do you really believe that's possible? Because, and again, I'm not saying it's easy, just like becoming a producer and raising money, you know, wasn't easy. None of this is easy. But if you don't think it's possible, that's going to affect the result for you. So you have to really believe that you do deserve to meet someone who's going to treat you well. And if you've been doing the same stuff for the last 10 years and it's not working, you know what? Like, people tend to do what they know and what feels familiar. But just because and that's true of anything, dating,
I agree.
Careers, you know, whatever, any choice you make in life, it's so easy to go for the familiar, but just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's the best thing for you.
That's right. Oh, totally. And
you have to take that risk and say, you know what, this is comfortable for me, but maybe I need to be uncomfortable and try something different to open up my life experience, because otherwise you're just going to get more of the same of whatever that was for you.
So this is going to become a show, right?
Yes, I'm actually in early development with a
talk about that a little bit, so is it going to be a comedy or is it going to be a drama, educational? What?
Well, we don't want to be preachy. You know, the messaging does feel important. So our hope is that someone will come see it and just be entertained and love it, but also walk out and have something to think about. Okay, you know, how do you show up in the world? Can I do things differently? It's not meant to be a dating lesson on stage. It's a nod to the book. It's a musical. We're going for smart humor and heart.
I love it.
You know, really.
And is there any date or time on that?
I wish.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how long these things take, but I'm
I don't
assuming
know how
it takes
long
a lot
this is
of
going to
time.
take either. To talk about not having a crystal ball. I wish I had a crystal ball for this one. It's, development takes time and you want to
I
get it right. I'm not writing it. So, we are in discussion with creatives
Oh, okay.
about the project. Yeah, it's just,
Okay.
I'm offering
Okay.
notes, as is my partner, but we're looking for a creative team to write it because I don't have musical theater writing experience. And I want to be able to assess it. And I always felt
Yeah.
like if I wrote it, how could I judge it? I really respect anyone who's capable of doing that, because I think when you're so close to it, it's just hard to do
Mm,
that.
yeah, absolutely. I had a question about the love coaching. So
Yeah.
the love coaching, I had a client last year, I think it was. And she and her husband kind of do this work. And before that time, I've had clients in almost every vertical that's ever been made, but this was new to me. And so I started doing the research about that world, and I was like, this is so interesting. There's so many relationship coaches. I had no idea in the world. And it seems like they're all a little bit different. And then they have these stories to tell. So just if someone's interested in that, like somebody that's watching this or listening to this,
Mhm.
what are some of the things that they should look for, like do's and don'ts on contacting if somebody's interested in a relationship coach? What is what is that all about? When do they do that? Because it is a whole big world. So,
Yeah. 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 I mean, I actually get hired, by singles themselves, but also sometimes parents, hire me,
really?
for their
Wow.
kids. So
Wow.
I think, sometimes it's hard to even think about hiring a love coach. Like, why would you need that?
Yeah.
How would that come up for you? I've actually had therapists refer a number of patients to me because the
That's-
therapist will dig into the real issues. Although I can touch on that too. But
mm,
then I come in with the strategic, thinking part of it. But I will tell you, I've had clients where I've had to really open their minds. I've had clients that I've worked with who just started out not having any self-esteem, and really just not believing in themselves and just being beaten down and being tired and angry. And even though I'm not a therapist, I'm very supportive. I think I'm somewhat intuitive and instinctual, and maybe not toward myself, but but toward other
yeah, I get it.
people.
Believe me. I get that one.
Yeah, I wish I could be more that way
I
myself.
know, I get it.
But I can usually pick up within the first like 10 minutes of talking to someone what is really going on here. Because typically what they think is going on isn't what's going on. And you have to be ready to receive. And you can want what you want, but if you're not in a good place yourself, it's not going to matter. And that has to come first. And so I do work with clients on that. And, only once we get them to a place of positivity and openness will I even start diving in and suggesting, I think you should go here, I think you should do that. And I'm very specific. Like if I say to someone, I think volunteer work would be good for you, I will actually tell them where to go. I will find
Oh,
events for them,
wow.
sign up here.
Hmm.
I'll email them activities, go here, go there. Like I don't,
Oh, I love
because
the
I'm doing
action piece of what you do.
yeah, I do the homework, and I honestly think that's unique. I think most relationship coaches and others dish
Yeah,
the advice but don't do the work.
they don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why I asked, because
yeah,
I've also had many clients in mental health space, and all these things are very different, and people can get
yeah,
confused on where do
yeah.
I go? Why do I do this? What am I going to get out of this? And also everybody receives things differently in terms of, like you said, they have to be open and ready. And
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, and I'm
It's
very
exciting.
specific.
Go ahead. So,
No, I'm just going to say I'm very specific. So I don't just, it's not just talk.
mm,
It's talk and action with details.
yes, I like that. And I feel like you know, a lot of the women that I work with through Warrior Women in Business, my company and whatever in New York, this relationship piece, although it's something that's obviously the most interesting to talk about, it definitely affects how they do business. and maybe they don't talk about it. So I think that might be an interesting thing as I honestly look at my future of Warrior Women programs, to have some type of panel or talk, because this comes up, Robin, all the time with my clients.
Interesting.
When I get to working with them, they start talking about their personal lives, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give you advice on your personal life. I'm going to give you advice on business. And so,
well, right, you can send them to me for the personal life part.
Yeah. So I think this might be a good thing to do
Yeah.
maybe with a group.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. And I think you actually, raise an interesting point, Jasmine, because I work with men and women of all ages,
Yeah.
but a lot of the clients I've had have actually been very successful women.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're not capable of meeting someone, and most of them have a lot to offer. But you know what? When you've been busy with your career, you're diving into work, you're multitasking all over the place. Dating is sometimes the last thing you think about, and because it's one more thing to do. And then you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, how old am I? And
it's like 20 years later.
well, right. And what do I want for myself? Would I like to have a relationship? Do I think I might want a family? Like what do you want? Because I think it's important to know that, because otherwise the years could go by. And if you're someone, for example, who thought they wanted kids, but then suddenly you wake up and you just feel like you're at an age where like that ship has sailed, so to speak, that's sad. And yeah. And I think it's important to try to step back. And that's also where I come in, because I take kind of a tough love approach with someone, and I get them to try to prioritize this as much as other things in their life, because it's easy not to do that.
It's very easy not to do that.
Yeah.
I think we're all guilty of it when I don't like the word type A, but it is a thing.
Yeah.
Because I was in a business meeting the other day, and this woman said, oh, we're all going to do this because we're all type A. And I kind of stopped and I said, oh, I don't know if I would announce that out loud, but I didn't say anything. But I think, women in business, women in the arts, women that want to be successful, sometimes that's our priority, and these other things get lost. And it's very important to do what you were talking about, the self-care. I think that's equally as important as everything else. So.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's a hustle. And when I first launched my work as a love coach, I wasn't sure. I didn't know what to call myself. And then I actually think I coined the term love coach, although I can't document that. But I had the website lovecoach.com for years. But until I thought of that name, I actually initially called myself a personal trainer for your love life. And I thought, okay, well, that's what I do. It doesn't sound really sexy. But the reason I arrived at that was because I just thought, well, how many people join a gym and then don't go? And I've even had that conversation with people, and I'll say, well, do you go to a gym? And then, because you can meet someone in a gym, like that could be good socially. And then I've had clients say to me, well, I belong. I'm like, that wasn't my question. My question was, do people go to a gym? And then I thought, it's the same thing. Like, why would someone hire a love coach? Well, is it essential to have a love coach? No. Can you do these things for yourself? Yeah. But are you?
That's right.
Will you? And I mean, why do people have personal trainers? Doesn't mean they don't know how to exercise, but the personal trainer gets them there and keeps them accountable. And that's something that I do too as a love coach, is that I will keep you accountable, because I'm going to circle back and I'm going to ask you what's going on.
And honestly, that's the key, is the accountability. I mean, in my executive coaching and executive branding, I had one of my clients called me a slave driver the other day, and I said, thank you. And he said, well, I'm happy about that. I'm happy that you're okay. He said, because we wouldn't get anything done. So
right, you're cracking the whip.
Not in a bad way, in a good, I mean, I'm not a slave driver, but I'm just keeping people accountable, because also I want to hit a goal, and you have to have that drive. I'm assuming your clients they want to hit a goal, so they need to someone needs to hold them accountable, or they might just spin their wheels,
Right, exactly. I mean, deadlines help, it's aspirations help, but it's if the aspiration feels tentative, like feels like it might not be doable for you, then you do want to have that cheerleader in the corner, whether it's a love coach or an executive coach, business coach, or, whatever it is.
And it makes you, and it also, it gives you, yeah, once you feel, I think, the support from someone who's keeping you accountable, it probably gives you a little bit of in your world, like a little bit of a lift, like to that person, I can do it, instead of, oh, I'll do this later, or maybe I can't do it. You never know what's going on with someone's head. But I think that that's the accountable piece of what you do is probably what really helps them in the end.
Well, yeah, I think it does. And I think also knowing that you have a sounding board. I mean, it's just, I've had clients who will have a session and they'll just like vent. I'm like, go ahead, go put it out there. You're angry, tell me, let it rip. I'm here to hear it. I'm going to respond to you, but better you say it to me, because who else would you say it to?
That's right.
Friends, I mean, how much friends are there for you, for sure. But friends have their own stuff going on. And, people necessarily, you don't want to be pounding away at your friends all the time. And then who are you going to say it to? Your parents, if your parents are around, well, they have their own perspective. So that's a whole other story.
That's a whole other conversation.
Right, exactly.
Parent
so, I'm safe. I'm a safe, grounded resource for people in that way.
I love that. Okay. Well, I love it. I think that we'll talk later about maybe putting something together for the group.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so let's talk about my favorite question is when I asked you to be on the podcast, which I did, Mark Walmsley, in 30 seconds. Mark is who runs the ACN. I asked you if you want to be on Warrior Women in Business. What did the term mean to you? And now that we're actually really getting to know each other, what does this mean? What does this mean to you?
I think you have to be fierce in a good way. You have to be driven. You have to not be afraid, take that risk, take that leap, stand up for yourself, in a positive, constructive way. Not be afraid to have that voice. That's what I do. I bring that voice into the room, as I mentioned, when I'm on the team for a show. I also bring that voice into the room when I'm working with love coaching clients. My goal, like your goal, is to help people, whether it's a show that I want to support and help, or my clients. And if I can't find that voice, then I can't do that. But I would add, as I mentioned earlier, just do it authentically. Do it authentically. Do it from the heart. Do it from a place that feels good. Be genuine about it. Because being a warrior, to me, isn't taking people down with you. Being a warrior is also supporting others and lifting others up, because what goes around comes around. And we all have to start someplace. And, why not? It takes a village. I say that all the time with theater, especially. It takes a village. And life takes a village.
Oh my God, does it not? Every day I say the same thing. I wake up and I say, I wish I had a village.
and different villages, a village for this, a village for that. It's, I would love the same as well. But just show up for others. And I think also recognize that we don't all think the same, and just respect that too. And being a warrior doesn't mean beating others down or being antagonistic or just feeling like you have to be in agreement. No, you have to be respectful. That's what you have to be, and hear other people. But sometimes you can learn from other people and surprise yourself. And, no one's right all the time.
No, I love what you said. I mean, really, it isn't so much about the offensive. It's about the support is so important, while being, like you said, fierce and knowing what you want, but also being open and respectful. And I feel like today there's so much disrespect in the world, especially online.
Yeah, there really is.
It's horrible. Like
people beating each other down, and I think
everything is a reason to put someone down. Instead, we should find reasons to pick people up.
Yeah, but you know what I think it partly is, Jasmine? I think people have a lot of anger. Not everybody, but since the pandemic, the world's become a little tougher. People were hurt by that. There's a lot of mental illness out there. I
Uh,
think people,
oh,
some
I
people are
know.
hurting, and
No,
I think that
I had a
is
whole podcast on suicide with the
yeah,
mayor's office during the pandemic because little old me, I thought, oh man, I got to do something. That's what I did. But unfortunately, I
yeah.
heard the stats and oh, I didn't even think about that. I mean, what you said.
Well, I think that's sometimes why people lash out because they can. It's an outlet on social media or wherever they're doing it, and maybe instead of stepping back and recognizing, oh, wow, I got mad in that moment, and they got triggered by something, perhaps,
Oh my
and
God.
maybe instead of looking at themselves, they push it out there because it's easier to have that knee jerk reaction rather than filter. And I think sometimes we just need to step back and take a breath
Mhm.
before you act or speak or do something because, if we pause a few minutes, your response might be totally different.
Absolutely. That's why they have boomerang on I always, ever since I was at IBM, which was a million years ago, we had like a save as draft email. And
Oh,
I always coach all business people and I say, use boomerang, save it as a draft. If you're upset about something, hold off.
right, exactly. Just
Hold off because it could have a
get
very
it.
bad trickle effect, you know.
Yep, get it out, but journal,
Yes.
do it.
Journal.
Go to the gym and hit a punching bag or
Also good.
or something. Exactly. And and that relates to dating too. I had that with one of my clients who I was love coaching, and it was a young guy, and he was actually just really angry. He was angry at his frustration of
Mm.
just not understanding in his mind, like, what was wrong with him? Like, why wasn't he meeting the
Mm.
right person? And eventually he did, I'm happy to say, and he's now
Oh,
actually
that's great.
successful relationship. And I'm so gratified, and that's a big part of why I do what I do, because it feels good to me. And I think that's a piece of being a warrior too, is that if you can do good for other people, it comes back to you and it feels good, and that's important at the end of the day. Work is work, and everybody wants to achieve and reach their goals, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think it needs to feel good, or why bother?
Yeah. I also think as I do things in life, some of that giving back at some points, I don't know if this is true with you as well in your work, but I feel like it's achieving a purpose. And that is like very whole. It fills you, achieving the
Mm-hmm.
purpose by giving back, not just giving back or doing good things, but there's some type of purpose in there. And I think that that's very important for people to start realizing, when they're, because it's, in my world, it's all about go, go, go.
Yeah,
But why
yeah,
am I doing this? And what's the purpose? And how am I affecting others? And I think
right.
you're definitely doing that in your work. I just thought it would be something I wanted to note based on what you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that is, as I mentioned, when I look at shows that I choose to get involved with, I think about that. I think, what's the message? Is there a message here? Not that there has to be a message, but sometimes there is one in
Yeah.
a show, or sometimes I'm doing it just because I think it's going to be pure fun and people just need that escapism. But
Yeah.
whatever it is, there has to be, as you said, a purpose or a reason that you want to jump into this activity, whatever it is for yourself, because it's nothing is easy, like you said.
No.
And theater is kind of a crazy world, and every now and then I have a day where I'm like, why am I doing this? But then I'm like, of course I know why I'm doing this, because I love it and it's my thing. But there's frustrations,
Of
you know,
course.
for sure. I mean, especially if a show is closing and it's your baby.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking, like, when that happens, unless it was planned. But and even when it's planned, it's heartbreaking because
Right. Because
still
you've created that.
you miss it. I mean, last year I won my first 24 parade, as you said, which was this
Yeah.
beautiful revival. And I'm very excited. We're going on tour in January,
Oh, really?
nationwide. Yeah. So that's like going to be super great because it's such an important show. Really talk about why, I'm sad that this show actually still resonates, because it shouldn't.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it does. And it's such
Yeah.
an important message and it's beautiful. And if anyone wants to get involved, they can reach out to me. I do have opportunity for that.
Great.
But I'm so proud of it. And I play the CD regularly in my car. And Jasmine, every time I play the
I'm gonna have
CD,
to put it on. You
I
start
start
crying?
to cry.
Oh,
I cry every time.
yeah, I
And
got it.
oh my God. And my husband's looking at me if we're driving together and he's like, really, Robin? And I'm like, yeah, sorry. I have to get the tissues out. And because I miss it, it's in my heart. But it's so beautiful that I just connect to it deeply. And I think when you find a show like that, it's so special. And with everything that's going on in the world and the challenges that people have to get into a theater, whatever show it is,
Oh, yeah, it's true.
let yourself go for the 2 to 3 hours or 90 minutes or whatever it is that
Yeah.
you're there, and just be present.
Oh, I know.
They,
I gotta say, Warhorse Warhorse is my favorite play of all time, and I
uh,
cried from the beginning to the end.
see, yeah, I know.
I don't know what it is, but that play was so cathartic for me. I don't know. So I get it. It's like you get so immersed and it's good and
Yeah,
really feel so emotional. You
it blows
Emotions
my
you don't
mind
even know
every
you
time.
had. Right.
Yeah. When I put that CD on, I have to I do a check. I'm like, okay, am I going somewhere? Because my makeup is inevitably going to bother.
Your black holes down.
Oh, totally. And I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be playing it right now because we're going out with another couple. I could play it after the meal because I'm a mess, every time with that. And I love it. I mean, not that I love to cry in theater, but I love to, when I cry, I know that it meant something to me.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a strong emotion. Well,
Yeah.
there's so much here. There's so many things to see. So first of all, I want to thank you so much for being on. This was very enjoyable. It's like I went to the theater. I didn't even have to buy a ticket. Thank you. But what I'm going to put in the show notes, I'm going to put how to contact Robin, her website, all your contact information. I'm going to put in all the show links,
Okay.
the information also about Smash. I
Yeah.
like to mention that because there probably are people that love it and that want to know more.
Oh, for sure.
Link to the book. The organizations will compile the organizations. I have so many organizations. I'm involved with the music world as well. Maybe we can put them
Oh,
together.
good.
Yeah. And I think we'll put all that in the show notes. And I think it would be wonderful as we're planning our next quarterly events, perhaps to have the love coach involved with one of our events. I know this is such a hot topic. I hear
Yeah.
it all the time, and people want to learn about it, but I think more importantly, they want to take action for themselves.
That's good. They want to take action.
They really do. And I think that they don't know how to do it. So I'm really happy that we talked about that today. Are there anything else you want to share before I get into some next things coming up on Warrior Women?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I feel like we talked about so much. I would just say if you love theater, go to theater, get tickets. I would like to add this actually that, people sometimes feel like theater breaks the bank,
It does.
in buying a ticket. And, I have to say, there's a lot of options out there. A lot of shows do lottery,
Yeah.
Rush, there's resources like TKTS and TDF. Today Tix even has some specials sometimes. You know what? Like, keep an eye out. Also, if you buy a preview ticket for a show, it's often cheaper than
What's a preview ticket for those of us that don't know?
Well, all shows have a certain period that they call a preview, and then they have an official opening night.
Okay.
So, and then once there's an official opening night, that's when the show actually gets reviewed, by critics.
Yay.
So often shows for the preview period and the amount of time can vary, based on the show, but it's usually a couple of weeks or so, or sometimes more. But whatever it is, like, you'll know, because if you go on the website and the show will say, okay, this is opening night, you can see what the date is and check the prices for preview versus after opening, because often they are less for preview, or if you get on a mailing list, like most shows, I know Smash, I'm sure has this too, like an email address where you can sign up. And even though it's early, like, do that, because that will get you plugged into the show so that when the show, if they're going to send out like a discount offer, or if they're going to have a mailer, mailer like with a discount code or something, like you're tapped into that. And so you'll get that. And that's always cheaper. And that's usually during preview, but sometimes it extends beyond. And so there's ways to get tickets that won't break the bank, and don't not go to theater because you feel like it's too much for you, because there are ways. And
I gotta say that I hear that too, and it kind of blows me away, because I'll say, oh, this show is here. Like there's a few shows I personally want to see, and people will say, oh, okay, let's plan that a couple months from now. And I'm like, why? Let's just go to it. I mean, you're going to spend a couple $100 doing anything in New York City, anything.
Right.
So, to see a show. And I love the cabaret experience that you mentioned also, the food, and it's a whole immersive experience. So
and that's included in any ticket price, not the food because that's extra, but the shops is any ticket price, and the prologue part is any ticket price, which is amazing because you're basically getting like really like 3.5 nights. I mean 3.5 hours rather, at show. And you don't have to spend the whole first hour at the prologue. You can even do half an hour. Yeah. But it's an add-on experience, for no extra cost. And I also would like to add that no show starts on Broadway. So check out the off-Broadway theaters, look at nonprofits, support them if you can. They need money because you know what? Like without the off-Broadway, without the regional, without all these other venues, shows wouldn't be able to come to Broadway because they have to start somewhere and get the kinks out, before they do. And off-Broadway is, if you can't afford Broadway for whatever reason, off-Broadway is a lot less. And if you get a subscription, then that's even less, per show. So there's a lot of ways to do theater more economically, and don't deprive yourself because you think you can't, because you can.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that, because there's been crazy little theaters that I've just gone to on the West 10th Avenue and like 25th Street. And I've seen the best shows of my life, just walking in. What is this? $20. And I think that helps people start to get involved with culture and the arts more in New York City and understand it, and then maybe they have a better education of, oh, this is on Broadway, I know what to look for, instead of just going to a Broadway show and not understanding that experience as they should, right?
Well, and also, I mean, if you look at some of the shows of this season, for example, like Stereophonic, just won Best Play.
Oh, yeah, right.
And Stereophonic was off Broadway. You could have, it was a lot cheaper, when it was
on Broadway.
Oh Mary, which is on Broadway now, just got fantastic reviews. I can't wait to see that. It's supposed to be insanely funny.
Oh, yeah?
That was off Broadway. Hell's Kitchen.
Hell's Kitchen. Oh, that's the one. It's on my list.
Yeah, which is on Broadway now. That was just at the Public Theater. That's off Broadway. So you know what? Keep an eye on the off-Broadway theaters. And if you're hearing buzz, and that's where I come in too, people often touch base with me, and I'm happy to weigh in on, what do you think I should see? Or what are you hearing? My ear is always to the ground. And I'm always listening for the buzz, what excites me, what am I hearing, whether it's regional, that I believe will be coming in, or if it's off Broadway that I'm keeping my eye on because I feel like it's going to be a thing. And I want to get in there and see it before it's that thing, because I might want to get involved with it if I think it's going to transfer. That's what happened with Parade. When I was on Parade, I saw it at City Center. And I wasn't necessarily looking for another show to get involved with. I mean, I'm always, like I said, keeping my ear to the ground. Right. But I never know until I see something. And I went to see that, not even knowing what the story was. I just loved Ben Platt. I love Michaela Diamond, who starred in it. Yeah. And I just thought, whatever this, Ben could sing the phone book and I'm good. So I'm just buying tickets, whatever. And I dragged my husband with me. And I was gobsmacked with that show.
Mensch, right?
Oh, totally.
I had to throw that in there.
Yes, he would have to be. Yeah. And I left the show and I couldn't even believe what I just saw. And I said to my husband, I can't speak right now. You have to give me 10 minutes. I was so taken by it. And then I turned around and I said, that's it. I just found my next show. I'll do anything that it takes to get on the show. It's one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen and vitally important. And, you know, and that was it. And that was at City Center is a great breeding ground and a place that people might look at too to see shows. Because Once Upon a Mattress, which is opening later this summer, that just transferred from there.
Oh.
So it's another way there's lots of places to catch shows before they hit Broadway.
Yeah, tons.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. And those experiences are always so intimate, right? When you go to one of those off-Broadway small theaters, like I remember when I lived in the West Village, I used to go to those. There was these small, unique, interesting things. And then I feel like in those experiences, you get to understand what it's like to almost like be in the industry of theater while being an outsider.
Totally.
So like half a step from the actors. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, for me, I'm fine in a big theater, but I love intimate too.
Yeah.
Because it adds to the experience, you know.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
And I love discovering whole new things. And I love new talent. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Tommy. We have 16 Broadway debuts in that show, including the lead who plays Tommy. And I love people that I know, like the Ben Platts of the world. But I also love seeing someone and just saying, you know, they're going to be a thing. And I'm going to remember that I saw them now. And I'm going to watch. We had a lot of that from Great Comet when I was on Great Comet. Danae Benton, for example, who was a female lead. She's done a gazillion things. Like she's a
I've been studying her actually lately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for singing. So incredible.
She was right out of college at Great Comet. She went to Carnegie Mellon and it was her Broadway debut. And, you know, look at that. Grace McLean is in Suffs right now. And Suffs was in Great Comet. And she's a writer as well. And she's written some crazy good musicals. And she started in Great Comet. So I love that. And that's the thrill of theater too, is just knowing that some people are just beginning their careers and you don't know where they're going to go. And then, you know, that could relate to you as well, because you don't know where you're going to go if there's something that you really want to do, but you just take that first step.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's it, taking the first step. There's so much we're going to put in the show notes today.
I know.
But I think we're going to fill everybody's calendar up for the whole summer, the fall, and the spring. Like seriously. I didn't even mention some of the shows that I'm interested in because we don't have time, but we're going to put everything in the show notes.
Okay.
Again, I really want to thank you for being on. It's been so fun. I can't wait to actually experience these shows. And speaking of that, for any of you that I've reached out to or you're new and you're interested in joining a few of us at Warrior Women at Tommy, please reach out. We're going to put that in the show notes, how to contact us, how to get involved with that, as well as some of the other shows. And we are planning a Warrior Women in Business, other events. I'd like to mention them a little bit. So our next podcast guest actually is kind of in most of my women guests are somewhere involved with entertainment. So this one, actually, I'm a keynote speaker and a industry leader in the music business world. And I teach at the Musicians Institute in Hollywood, California. And I met this woman at the National Association of Music Manufacturers, which is a big industry conference in music. I was speaking and she started a law firm called Holt Law. And she's my next podcast guest. And she deals primarily with IP around film, music, the publishing company. And she really, really helps creatives, primarily female creatives, and understanding how to leverage the law for their career success. And I think that's such a missing piece of things in my world, because a lot of female creatives, first of all, they're afraid to spend any money on legal support. They don't understand it. They don't understand how to leverage it. They don't understand the power of the copyright, the power of the trademark. They just don't really understand how that can help them raise their monetary value. So she's on next week on the 24th, Melissa Rusling. She's going to be on the 24th. We're going to be announcing that. If any of you had attended the event that I and the Warrior Women team produced, supporting New York Music Month last month at the local union, Musicians Union 802, where we had 5 bands play, including mine, and where everybody won a trophy. It was a really good event because the primary reason I love the event is all of the musicians really supported each other. and we're kind of all on the same page, which is, hey, you know, we want to get paid, we want to grow our careers, but we want to do it together, and we're building this New York City community. So since that concert, I've had like 20 to 25 female-led bands reach out to me personally and say, hey, can we play at the next one? So we are planning a concert series. I'm very excited about it. And it really is about supporting women in music. And that's a big thing we're going to be announcing. And we're also going to be announcing other educational events coming up. All of that you can find on our website, warriorwomeninbusiness.com. In the show notes, we'll put links to that, all of Robin's information, all of the resources she's provided, and also the dates on some of the shows she's involved with, so you don't miss them. That's really important. And the venues. So there'll be a lot. Check out for the show notes. If you have any questions for Robin, lovecoach.com, you can reach out to her. Any questions for Warrior Women in Business, we'll put that in there. Again, my name is Jasmine Sandler. This has been such an enjoyable conversation. I can't wait till we meet in person and we all learn from Robin. So if you have anything else to add, please do it this time. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off from episode 59. Anything, Robin, you want to end with?
Just my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It was really a delight. And I know we shared a lot, but I hope it was helpful to listeners. And honestly, feel free to call on me with questions and such. And I would love to team up again and see what else we can do.
We will. So look out for Warrior Women Love Coach Fest coming soon.
Yeah, there you go.
And yes, and please reach out. So again, my name is Jasmine Sandler, Warrior Women in Business Podcast 59. Look out for your invite to episode 60 coming up next Wednesday afternoon. You don't want to miss that. If you want to really understand how to leverage the law to raise your career value as a creative. So thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.
Welcome. You too. Take care, everyone.